The wind howled across the Montana plains, a white demon screaming through the pitch-black night of Christmas Eve. My Lin could barely feel her feet. The numbness had started in her toes an hour ago and had slowly crept up her legs, turning her movements into a clumsy, jarring shuffle. She had been fighting the cold fear and exhaustion for so long that her thoughts drifted like loose paper in a gale. Her breath cracked in her throat, crystallizing instantly in the freezing air. Every step sent a jolt of pain through her frozen limbs, yet she forced herself to keep moving. If she stopped now, amidst this endless expanse of snow, she knew she would never rise again. She clutched the collar of her heavy, tattered wool coat, pulling it tighter against her neck. Beneath the rough western fabric, the silk of her crimson cheongsam, a remnant of a life and a husband now gone, offered no warmth, only a fragile memory of dignity. Her fingers slipped on the ice-licked leather of her satchel. Her vision blurred, the white swirling snow merging with the darkness. Then, a shape filled her world. It was not a tree or a rock, but a structure. A cabin. A door. She stumbled forward, her hand striking the rough wood. She didn't remember falling against the timber in the wilderness. She didn't remember the door opening. She only remembered the wall of warmth that hit her, a physical force that smelled of wood smoke and pine. Then came a stronger force. Two arms, massive and steady, lifted her with ease, carrying her inside as if she weighed no more than a bag of grain. She felt her cheek touch something solid, a chest like a warm oak beam. Then the door slammed shut, sealing out the winter's rage. "Easy," a man's voice rumbled. It was low, steady, the voice of someone accustomed to the silence of the mountains. "You're safe now." Her knees buckled as he set her down, but he caught her again. He placed her near a fire that glowed bright and fierce in a stone hearth. Her boots were soaked through, her coat stiff with ice. She tried to speak, to offer gratitude, but her lips barely moved. "Th. Thank you," she stammered, the English syllables clumsy in her frozen mouth. "Don't talk yet." The man moved with quiet purpose, disappearing into the shadows of the room. When he returned, he carried blankets and a steaming iron mug. "Drink." My Lin tried to lift the cup, but her hands shook violently. The man steadied them with one of his own. His palm was calloused and rough, swallowing her slender hands completely. The drink burned warm down her throat, coffee, strong and black, with enough whiskey to wake the heat in her chest. Who are you?" Ishi whispered, the warmth slowly loosening her tongue. "Name's Grant Mercer." He crouched in front of her, studying her face with eyes the color of slate. They were not unkind, nor were they soft, they were eyes that had seen long, hard winters and too much solitude. "You're a long way from anywhere." "Folks in Pine Ridge aren't expecting travelers in this weather." "I was trying to reach the town," she said, her voice gaining strength. "My wagon." The driver panicked when the storm began. He unhitched the horse and rode off. "I walked until I saw your light." "You're lucky you saw anything at all," Grant said, rising to check the window. Snow beat against the glass in thick, white bursts. "This one isn't letting up soon. It's Christmas Eve, and the sky is falling. We're looking at 3 days snowbound. Maybe more." 3 days. My Lin's heart clenched. She had worked too hard to secure a place in Pine Ridge, to leave behind the whispers and the tragic memories of the railroad camps where her husband had died. She needed to establish herself before her meager savings ran out. "I have to reach the town. I have a room reserved at the boarding house." "You're not going anywhere tonight." Grant's tone held no rudeness, only the unvarnished truth of the frontier. "The storm will take you if you try. Sit by the fire. Warm up." She wanted to argue, to insist on her independence, but the fire was seductive. She wrapped herself tighter in the blanket. As the feeling returned to her extremities, pain rolled through her hands and feet, a stinging reminder that she was alive. That alone felt like a miracle. As the warmth settled into her bones, she looked around the cabin. It was sturdy, large for a single man. There was handmade furniture, a swept wooden floor, and a shelf filled with books, Shakespeare, Emerson, weather journals, more literature than she had expected in such a remote homestead. "You live here alone?" she asked softly. "5 years," Grant replied, stoking the fire. "And there's no one nearby. Closest neighbor is 10 miles west." My Lin swallowed hard. A Chinese widow alone with a massive rancher she did not know. The thought was sharp and cold, cutting through the comfort of the fire. In the camps, being a woman alone was a dangerous thing. Grant read the fear in her face. "You'll be safe here," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "I give you my word." Something in his tone eased the knot in her chest. Still, her mind raced. Her reputation was already fragile. 3 days snowbound with a stranger could ruin her prospects in a new town. Grant seemed to consider something, then he stepped closer. "One thing you need to know," he nodded toward the single bed against the far wall. "There's only one place to sleep." My Lin stiffened, her spine straightening beneath the blanket. "I'll take the chair," Grant continued quickly. "But if you stay there all night, you'll freeze. Even with the fire going, nights cut deep out here, especially in a blizzard. Body heat matters." She met his eyes. He held her gaze without flinching. "I'm not asking anything of you," he said. "Just trying to keep you alive. It's Christmas Eve. I'm not about to let a guest freeze to death on a holy night." She believed him. She couldn't explain it, but the stillness in him felt like the stillness of a mountain, imposing, but trustworthy. Grant handed her a dry shirt, clearly his own. "You can change in the back room. I'll stay out here." She clutched the shirt with numb fingers. When she went to the small back room and peeled off her wet layers, the red silk of her cheongsam seemed impossibly bright against the grey rough-hewn wood of the cabin. She changed into his dry shirt, which hung to her knees, and returned to the main room. "Why would you help me like this?" she asked, clutching the blanket around her. "You do not know me. I am a stranger from a different world." He looked back at the window, watching the storm erase the world outside. "Because you came out here alone," he said quietly. "Because you took a chance on a new life. And because a man who's been alone long enough learns to help someone who's trying to start over." My Lin felt a tremor inside her, not from cold this time. "I don't even know you," she whispered. Grant turned toward her, his expression softening in a way that surprised her. "You will," he said. "If you want to." She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, on this frozen Christmas Eve, she chose survival. She chose warmth. She chose trust. "Thank you," she said. Grant nodded once. "Settle in, My Lin. The storm's just getting started." My Lin woke to the soft crackle of the fire. Warmth wrapped around her like a heavy quilt. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then, she breathed in the scent of wood smoke, pine, and strong coffee. Grant's shirt, far too large for her, brushed her wrists. She blinked slowly. The storm still muttered against the windows, but the world inside the cabin was quiet, safe. She sat up, feeling strength return to her limbs. A sound reached her, the solid, rhythmic thud of an axe outside. She rose and crossed to the frosted window. Grant stood in the swirling morning snow, splitting logs with easy, practiced movements. His breath rose in grey clouds. His wool shirt clung to his broad shoulders. Each swing of the axe landed clean, controlled, measured. The sight steadied her more than the fire had. She wrapped the blanket around herself and walked to the small table where her leather satchel waited. Her identification papers, her few pieces of jewelry, her sewing needles. She checked each item with care. They were damp but safe. "You're up," Grant's voice came from the doorway. My Lin startled slightly. He stepped inside, brushing snow from his hair. He carried an armful of logs that he stacked near the hearth. "You slept hard," he said. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," she replied, the words feeling strange on her tongue in this wilderness. "I was very tired." He poured coffee and set a mug in front of her. "Drink while it's hot." She wrapped both hands around it. The warmth settled through her palms. You made breakfast, she noted, looking at the table. A plate of biscuits sat there with a jar of berry preserves. Figured you'd need it, he shrugged. She spread a little jam on a biscuit, surprised by the sweetness. This is wonderful. Grant sat across from her, elbows resting lightly on his knees. He watched her eat without saying much. He didn't stare, he simply noticed. Tell me something, he said at last. Why would a woman travel all the way out here to Pine Ridge alone? It's a rough place. Hard winters, harder living. My Lin set down the biscuit, her heart tightening. I wanted a life that belonged to me, she said. My husband. He worked the rails. He was a good man, but the work was dangerous. When he passed, the company gave me nothing. The people in the settlements are only a widow who didn't belong. I heard Pine Ridge needed a seamstress, someone who could work with fine fabrics as well as canvas. I have skills. I decided to leave for good. Grant's jaw tightened. Took courage to start over. It took fear, she said honestly. Fear of fading away. Fear of becoming a ghost before I was dead. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Still took courage. Silence settled between them, a warm, steady silence that didn't feel heavy. After breakfast, Grant checked the storm again. Not clearing yet. Another day at least. I should help, My Lin said. I can work. I do not want to sit idle. He tipped his head toward a basket near the hearth. Some mending in there. If you feel up to it. I'm useless with a needle. She picked up one of his shirts and laughed softly. You tear these often. Work's rough out here. As she stitched, her fingers moving with the fluid grace of a master seamstress, Grant sat by the fire repairing a leather harness. They shared small pieces of their lives. She spoke of her childhood, the scent of jasmine tea, and the long journey across the ocean. He spoke of the cabin he had built with his own hands and the years he'd spent alone on this land. At one point, he reached for his coffee and winced. You are hurt, My Lin said, her eyes sharp. Just a cracked rib. Old injury. How? War, he said shortly. Did you fight in many battles? More than I care to remember, his tone carried a finality that told her not to press further. After it ended, I came west. Needed quiet. Needed space. My Lin nodded. She understood. She, too, had come west seeking something she could not name. Later, Grant pulled out a harmonica. He held the small instrument with a strange tenderness. Haven't played for a while. Figured it's Christmas, might be nice to have some music. I would like that, she said softly. The first note rose warm and full in the cabin. He played simple songs, old carols, and quiet folk tunes passed down through families, the kind that carried memory inside them. My Lin felt tears slip down her cheeks before she could stop them. Grant stopped playing immediately. Did I upset you? No, she wiped her face. It is beautiful. I haven't heard music since before. He played another piece, gentle and steady. She listened with closed eyes. When he finished, the silence that followed wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Grant, she said finally. Why did you offer me help so quickly? You didn't even know me. He set the harmonica aside, his voice lowered. Storms take people fast. I wasn't about to let it take you. And I know what it feels like to stand at the edge of life and wonder if anyone would care enough to pull you back. Her breath caught. Were you there once? Yes, the word carried weight. Enough weight to make her chest ache. He rose and began preparing the bed with thick quilts. You take the left side tonight, he said quietly. It stays warmer. I'll stay on the right. Just sleep. Nothing more. My Lin touched the edge of the quilt. Thank you. Truly. Grant paused. Storm will clear soon. When it does, I'll take you to town. But until then, his voice softened. You're safe here. She believed him more deeply than she expected. As she settled into the warm bed, Grant took the other side, careful to keep his space. The storm still raged outside, but inside the cabin, it felt different now. Not just safe, something was beginning. Something she wasn't ready to name yet. The storm eased by the morning of the third day, but the world outside still swirled in white. The wind no longer screamed, it whispered instead, as if tired from its long fight. My Lin woke slowly, her cheek warm against the heavy quilt. The other side of the bed was empty, but still faintly warm. Grant must have left only moments ago. She sat up, listening. A soft clatter came from the stove. The smell of coffee drifted through the cabin. For the first time in months, she felt rested. Grant turned as she stepped into the main room, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Morning," he said. "Good morning." Her voice was quiet, almost shy. He handed her a mug of coffee. "Storm's breaking. Sun might come out later. We can ride to Pine Ridge today." Her heart tugged. Of course. That was the plan. Grant must have sensed the hesitation in her voice, but he didn't mention it. He simply said, "Eat first. It's a long ride." They shared a quiet breakfast. She kept catching him watching her in small moments, not staring, just noticing, memorizing. She felt the same pull in herself, though she didn't say it aloud. After packing her satchel and wrapping herself in her coat, hiding the vibrant silk of her cheongsam once more, My Lin followed Grant outside. The air was sharp and cold, but the storm had lost its bite. The world glittered with fresh snow. Grant saddled his horse, then brought out a gentle bay mare for her. "She's steady," he said. "Won't give you trouble." My Lin stroked the horse's neck. "She is beautiful." "Ready?" Grant asked. She nodded, though part of her wished she wasn't. They rode in silence for a while, the snow crunching softly under hooves. The sky opened wider as they traveled, revealing a land that looked almost new. White hills rolled like quiet waves. My Lin breathed in the cold air and felt something shift inside her. "You're quiet today," Grant said. "So are you." He smiled faintly. "Guess we're both thinking." "About what comes next?" she asked. Grant didn't answer right away. His voice came slow. "Something like that." They reached the ridge overlooking Pine Ridge. Smoke curled from chimneys. People moved between the wooden buildings. Life moved with simple purpose. My Lin's new life. Grant reined in his horse beside her. His breath fogged in the air. His voice softened. "Town's right there. I'll get you to the boarding house. Make sure they've got room." "Grant." He waited. My Lin struggled for words. She felt the pull of the town and the independence she had sought. But she also felt the pull of the man beside her, steady and strong. The man who had carried her through a blizzard on Christmas Eve. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't owe me a thing." "I feel like I do." Grant turned his horse slightly toward her. "My Lin, I didn't do any of this expecting something back. You were freezing alone. Anyone decent would have helped. But not everyone would have shared their home, their fire, their warmth." She looked at him for a long moment. "You brought something into that cabin," he said quietly. "Something I didn't realize was missing." Her chest tightened. "What was missing?" she whispered. He took a long breath. "Light." The word landed softly, carefully, like he was setting it in her hands. My Lin swallowed hard. The wind brushed her hair. Her heart felt too full. "Grant, I..." Before she could finish, a shout rose from below. A group of men stood near the general store, looking up at the ridge. Grant straightened in the saddle. "Looks like you have a welcoming committee," he said, though his tone had hardened slightly. "You belong with them," he said gently, gesturing to the town. Start your business. Build your life. And what about you? She whispered. I'll manage, he said with a small smile. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. They rode the last stretch slowly. When they reached the main street, Grant dismounted first and helped her down. His hands lingered at her waist for a moment too long. She didn't step away. Will I see you again? She asked quietly. If you want to, he said. I do. His breath caught slightly. Then I'll come by when the trail's clear. She watched as he mounted his horse and turned back toward the white horizon. His figure grew smaller and smaller until the snow-washed land swallowed him whole. My Lin exhaled slowly. She had come to Pine Ridge to begin a new life. She hadn't expected to leave her heart on the road behind her. Life in Pine Ridge settled around My Lin faster than she expected. Within a week, she had rented a small space at the back of the mercantile. Her skill with a needle was unlike anything the town had seen. She mended canvas for the miners and embroidered delicate silk for the wives of the town council. The kindness of the locals warmed her, but every evening when the sun dipped behind the hills, her thoughts drifted to Grant Mercer. He came to town on the 10th day. My Lin was closing her shop shutters when she heard the soft tread of boots behind her. Her heart lifted before she even turned. Grant stood there, hat in hand, snow dusting his coat. Evening, My Lin. Her breath caught at the sight of him. You came. Promised I would. He walked with her to the boarding house. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, but his presence warmed the cold evening air. How is the cabin? She asked. Quiet. The single word carried more weight than a whole paragraph. She smiled gently. I miss it too. Grant looked at her then, really looked. A question sat in his eyes. Before either of them could say more, a sharp voice called out from the street. Well, now. If it isn't Grant Mercer. Grant stiffened. My Lin followed his gaze and saw a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, thin, dressed too fine for a frontier town. His smile was polite, but his eyes held something colder, like a snake sunning itself on a rock. I'm sorry, My Lin said carefully. Do you know him? Grant didn't answer right away, his jaw tight. Name's Holt. Holt tipped his hat at My Lin. I see the hermit has found himself some exotic company. My Lin forced a polite smile, though the slur stung. Welcome to Pine Ridge. Oh, I'm not staying. Just passing through. Holt's eyes slid back to Grant. Something sharp flickered there. But I always keep an eye out for old friends. We served together, didn't we, Grant? We're not friends, Grant said quietly. No, I suppose we're not, Holt chuckled softly. But paths cross anyway, don't they? My Lin sensed danger even without understanding the words. Holt gave Grant a slow, pointed glance before turning away. See you around, he said. Grant didn't move until Holt was gone. Grant, My Lin whispered. Who was he? He didn't look at her. Someone I used to know. Someone I hoped was long behind me. Her heartbeat quickened. She stepped closer. Tell me what you mean. Finally, he met her eyes. Not here. Come walk with me. They walked toward the quiet edge of town where lantern light softened the snow. Grant's voice came low, steady, as if each word cost him something. There's a part of my past I haven't told you. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't want to stain the life you're building. Years ago, after the war, I fell in with the wrong men. Men like Holt. We were hungry, angry. We thought taking what we wanted was a way to survive. I wasn't with them long, just long enough to make mistakes I've carried ever since. My Lin breathed in slowly. You are not that man anymore. No, he said quietly. But Holt still is. And men like him don't let go of old debts. Her pulse picked up. Are you in danger? Maybe. Maybe not. Grant looked toward the hills. But he's not in Pine Ridge by accident. He came looking. And if he came, others might too. A tremor passed through My Lin. Not fear of Grant, but fear for him. What do you want me to do? She asked. Just stay aware. And don't walk alone after dark. She nodded. All right. He hesitated. And My Lin. If anything happens, if trouble comes looking. She stepped closer, cutting him off. I am not leaving because someone from your past wants to rattle you. His shoulders softened. He hadn't expected that answer. She could see it in the way he exhaled, long and slow. You don't understand, he said. Holt doesn't just rattle. He breaks things. He hurts people. Her voice softened. Then we face it together. Grant stared at her with an emotion she couldn't name, admiration, fear, hope, all mixed. You shouldn't tie yourself to a man with shadows in his past, he said. She reached out and touched his hand. Just lightly. Just enough. Everyone has shadows, Grant. Some are just easier to see. For a moment, he didn't move. Then his fingers closed around hers. Warm, gentle, certain. My Lin, he said quietly. You're braver than you know. The wind stilled. The world felt small around them. Something shifted in Grant, something deep, something long locked away. He lifted her hand and held it against his chest, just above his heartbeat. A soft promise. A wordless vow. I won't let harm touch you, he said. Not while I breathe. She believed him with her whole heart. 2 days later, My Lin was measuring fabric in the mercantile when she noticed the dust on the horizon. Not storm dust. Riders. Moving fast. Her heart tightened. She stepped out onto the porch, gripping the railing. Other townsfolk stopped their work. The riders grew clearer. For men. One of them wore a dark coat and rode with relaxed confidence. Holt. Before My Lin could act, a deep voice sounded behind her. Get inside. She turned. Grant stood on the steps, jaw tight, shoulders squared, eyes cold. She hadn't even heard him ride in. He stepped in front of her without hesitation, placing himself between her and the approaching danger. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Wasn't letting them reach you alone. Grant. No fear now, he murmured. I'm right here. The riders slowed to a halt in front of the store. Holt dismounted first. His smile was easy, but his eyes were sharp. Well, Mercer. Heard you'd gone respectable. New name for yourself. New lady. Grant didn't move. You don't belong in Pine Ridge. Holt shrugged. Just came to collect what's owed. There's nothing owed. Holt flicked his gaze to My Lin. Seems to me the pretty widow deserves to know the truth about the man she's keeping company with. Grant's voice dropped. Leave her out of this. Why? Holt asked. You didn't leave us out when you ran. Men paid the price for your sudden conscience. Grant stepped forward. I paid my price. I walked away from the gold we took. I left it all behind to build something honest. I won't let you bring that poison here. Holt's smile vanished. Then pay what you owe. With interest. No. Holt drew his gun. My Lin gasped. But before Holt could aim, the door of the mercantile opened. The shopkeeper stepped out with a shotgun. Then the blacksmith emerged from his forge across the street, a heavy hammer in hand. Then the sheriff, and half a dozen other men, the farmers, ranchers, men with calloused hands who didn't bluff. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They simply stood steady, rooted, unshaken. This town stands with Grant, the blacksmith said. If you want him, you go through all of us. Holt scanned the silent line of men. He looked at Grant, who stood tall and unyielding. He looked at My Lin, who stood right beside him, refusing to cower. You won't win this, Grant said quietly. Not today. Holt's jaw clenched. For a long moment, no one breathed. Finally, he holstered his gun. "Last time I walk away," Holt said. "Next time, Mercer. Next time you answer alone." Grant didn't flinch. "There won't be a next time." Holt mounted his horse. His men followed. In moments they were riding hard, disappearing over the ridge. Silence filled the road. The blacksmith let out a slow breath. "Thought we were about to see a real bad morning." Grant nodded his thanks to the men, but his eyes turned to My Lin immediately. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his coat. He froze for half a second, surprised, then held her carefully, fiercely. "You didn't have to face them alone," she whispered. "You never will." Grant's voice trembled. "My Lin, I was afraid you'd step away after hearing all that." "Why?" she asked softly, pulling back to look at him. "You told me the truth. You stood for this town, and they stood for you. That is the man I see." His breath shook. She lifted her hands to his face. "Grant Mercer, I am not leaving your side." He closed his eyes, letting the words settle deep. "Come with me," he said. "There's something I need to ask you." They walked a little past the store to a quiet stretch of snowy field, away from the prying eyes of the town. Grant took off his hat, holding it against his chest. "I've been thinking about this since Christmas," he said. "Since the night you stepped into my cabin half frozen and changed my whole world." My Lin's lips parted, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I don't want a quiet life alone anymore," Grant continued. "I want a life with you. A life we build together. A home. A future. A family, if it's meant to be." Her eyes filled with tears. He stepped closer. "My Lin," he said softly. "Will you marry me? Will you stand with me in this valley and build something worth keeping?" The cold wind slowed. Even the snowflakes seemed to hang suspended in the air, listening. My Lin pressed her hand over his, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the wool. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Grant. I will." He exhaled sharply, almost stumbling forward as he gathered her into his arms. She laughed through her tears as he lifted her off the ground in a warm, fierce embrace. The townsfolk back at the mercantile watched from a distance, and a cheer went up. My Lin buried her face against Grant's chest, laughing, crying, holding on to the lone rancher she had chosen, the man who had chosen her first. The man who would choose her every day forward. Together, they walked back toward Pine Ridge, toward their new life, toward the home they would build hand in hand. And for the first time, My Lin felt the future open wide and bright before her, a future she wanted, a future she trusted, and a bold offer she would cherish for the rest of her days.